Responsibility is major part of being American with unalienable rights. Killing other humans is not being responsible. Please continue.
Return to the early '80s, and here I was off to a terrifying start as a wet behind this contract software engineer, and 2 years later, thanks to the fine backroom, midnight effort by the sleazy executives of Arthur Andersen, the very same folks who later brought us Enron and other such calamities, and an equally sleazy New York Senator, Patrick Moynihan, we saw the passage of 1986 Tax Reform Act with its Section 1706. For you who are unfamiliar, here is the core text of the IRS Section 1706, defining the treatment of workers, such as contract engineers, for tax purposes. Visit this link for a conference committee report, http x 1706. Treatment of certain technical personnel. Or in general, Section 530 of the Revenue Act of 1978 is amended, by adding at the end here of the following new subsection. D. Exception, this section shall not apply in the case of an individual who, pursuant to an arrangement between the taxpayer and another person, provides services for such other person as an engineer, designer, drafter, computer programmer, systems analyst, or other similarly skilled worker engaged in a similar line of work. B. Effective date, the amendment made by this section shall apply to remuneration paid, and services rendered after December 31, 1986. Note, another person is the client in the traditional job shop relationship. Taxpayer is the recruiter, broker, agency, or job shop. Individual, employee, or worker is you.
Now we are back to taxes. This is a recurring issue, and seems to be the predominant one. Why?
Admittedly, you need to read the treatment to understand what it is saying, but it's not very complicated. The bottom line is that they may as well have put my name right in the text of Section D. Moreover, they could only have been more blunt if they would have came out and directly declared me a criminal and non-citizen slave. 20 years later, I still can't believe my eyes.
Given your last statement, taxes appear to have become a very personal issue to you. What happened to make this so?
During 1987, I spent close to $5,000 of my pocket change, and at least 1,000 hours of my time writing, printing, and mailing to any senator, congressman, governor, or slug that might listen. None did, and they universally treated me as if I was wasting their time. I spent countless hours on the LA freeways driving to meetings and any and all of the disorganized professional groups who were attempting to mount a campaign against this atrocity. This, only to discover that our efforts were being easily derailed by a few moles from the brokers, who were just beginning to enjoy the windfall from the new declaration of their freedom. Oh, and don't forget, for all of the time I was spending on this, I was losing income that I couldn't bill clients. After months of struggling, it had clearly gotten to be a futile exercise. The best we could get for all of our trouble is a pronouncement from a nice mouthpiece that they weren't going to enforce that provision. Read Harris Engineers and Scientists. This immediately proved to be a lie, and the mere existence of the regulation began to have its impact on my bottom line. This, of course, was the intended effect. Again, rewind my retirement plans back to zero and shift them into idle. If I had any sense, I clearly should have left abandoned engineering and never looked back. Instead, I got busy working 100-hour work weeks. Then came the LA Depression of the early 1990s. Our leaders decided that they didn't need all of those extra Air Force bases they had in Southern California, so they were closed, just like that. The result was economic devastation in the region that rivaled the widely publicized Texas S&L fiasco. However, because the government caused it, no one gave a shit about all of the young families who lost their homes, or street after street of boarded-up houses abandoned to the wealthy loan companies who received government funds to shore up their windfall. Again, I lost my retirement. Years later, after weathering a divorce and the constant struggle trying to build some momentum with my business, I find myself once again beginning to finally pick up some speed. Then came the combust and the 911 nightmare. Our leaders decided that tall aircraft were grounded for what seemed like an eternity, and long after that, special facilities like San Francisco were on security alert for months. This made access to my customers prohibitively expensive. Ironically, after what they had done, the government came to the aid of the airlines with billions of our tax dollars. As usual, they left me to rot and die while they bailed out their rich, incompetent cronies with my money. After these events, there went my business, but not quite yet all of my retirement and savings.
Yes, tough times in America for the working class. Many have lost everything, including retirement, yet they are not committing murder. Please go on.
By this time, I'm thinking that it might be good for a change. Bye to California, I'll try Austin for a while. So I moved, only to find out that this is a place with a highly inflated sense of self-importance, and where damn little real engineering work is done. I've never experienced such a hard time finding work. The rates are 1/3 of what I was earning before the crash, because pay rates here are fixed by the 3 or 4 large companies in the area, who are in collusion to drive down prices and wages. And this happens because the Justice Department is all on the take, and doesn't give a fuck about serving anyone or anything but themselves and their rich buddies. To survive, I was forced to cannibalize my savings and retirement, the last of which was a small IRA. This came in a year with mammoth expenses, and not a single dollar of income. I filed no return that year, thinking that, because I didn't have any income, there was no need. The sleazy government decided that they disagreed. But they didn't notify me in time for me to launch a legal objection, so when I attempted to get a protest filed with the court, I was told I was no longer entitled to due process, because the time to file ran out. Bend over for another $10,000 helping of justice. So now we come to the present. After my experience with the CPA world, following the business crash, I swore that I'd never enter another accountant's office again. But here I am with a new marriage and a boatload of undocumented income, not to mention an expensive new business asset, a piano, which I had no idea how to handle. After considerable thought, I decided that it would be irresponsible not to get professional help, a very big mistake.
Professional help is often warranted or needed, especially when we get to the point where we feel we are taking on the whole world by ourselves. Now that we are in the present, what drove you to take such drastic action?
When we received the forms back, I was very optimistic that they were in order. I had taken all of the year's information to Bill Ross, and he came back with results very similar to what I was expecting. Except that he had neglected to include the contents of Cheryl's unreported income, $12,700 worth of it. To make matters worse, Ross knew all along this was missing, and I didn't have a clue until he pointed it out in the middle of the audit. By that time, it had become brutally evident that he was representing himself, and not me. This left me stuck in the middle of this disaster, trying to defend transactions that have no relationship to anything tax-related. At least the tax-related transactions were poorly documented. Things I never knew anything about, and things my wife had no clue would ever matter to anyone. The end result is, well, just look around.